The story begins with Alec, an ordinary man from New Zealand, whose life unraveled in 1989, revealing truths that echo ancient theories and modern conspiracies alike. But to grasp the full weight of his abduction, we must first confront the core revelation. Humanity is not the product of millions of years of natural selection, as Charles Darwin proposed, but the deliberate creation of extraterrestrial elders, advanced beings who seeded life on Earth through genetic manipulation. This idea isn't new. It resonates with the groundbreaking work of Erich von Däniken in his book Chariots of the Gods, first published in 1968. Von Däniken argued that ancient civilizations were visited by extraterrestrials whom our ancestors mistook for gods. He pointed to the Anunnaki from Sumerian mythology, beings from the planet Nibiru who, according to ancient tablets, engineered Homo sapiens to mine gold for their atmosphere. These visitors, he claimed, left behind monumental evidence like the pyramids of Giza, which weren't mere tombs but sophisticated energy devices aligned with celestial bodies. What if I told you that your most cherished, most vivid memory is a lie? Not a misremembered detail, not a trick of the mind, but a complete fabrication, an echo from a world that is no longer ours. Picture it. Think of the beloved character, Pikachu. You can see him in your mind's eye right now, can you not? Yellow, cheerful, with a lightning bolt tail, a tail that has a distinct black tip. You remember it. You have seen it 1,000 times on television, on trading cards, in video games. It is an unshakable fact of your childhood. Except it is not a fact at all. It never was. Go and look at any official image, from any point in history. The tip of Pikachu's tail has always been pure yellow. There has never been a black tip. So where did your memory come from? Where did the collective memory of millions of people who swear they remember that black tip come from? This unsettling phenomenon is what our modern world has termed the Mandela effect, named for the widespread, incorrect memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison decades before his actual death. It is the Berenstain Bears, a name millions remember as Berenstein. It is the iconic movie line, "Luke, I am your father," a line that was never spoken. The actual line is, "No, I am your father." Oh, what are these moments? Are they simply mass misrememberings, a quirk of our flawed psychology, or are they something more profound? Are they scars on our reality? Faint whispers from parallel timelines that have bled into our own? Are we experiencing the aftershocks of a reality that was edited, changed, leaving behind phantom memories of a world that used to be? It is in the quiet moments, in the dead of night when the world is still, that these questions surface, challenging the very bedrock of our existence. And it is for those very questions, for that shared sense of wonder and unease, that we gather here, in this space. Welcome to Mystery History for Sleep. I am Mr. H, your guide through the corridors of the unknown. The stories we explore here are not meant to provide easy answers, but to deepen the questions, to peel back the veil of the mundane and gaze into the abyss of possibility. If you, too, are a seeker of the patterns hidden in the static, a traveler who feels that there is more to this world than what we are told, then I invite you to become a permanent member of this expedition. Subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so that you never miss a journey into the twilight of our known world. For the mysteries are endless, and our exploration has only just begun. Now, let us return to the static, to the glitches in our perceived reality, because as unsettling as a false memory can be, it is nothing compared to a different kind of anomaly. An anomaly that does not just alter a memory of the past, but removes a piece of your life entirely. I am speaking of the phenomenon known as missing time. It is a recurring theme in the testimony of those who claim to have had encounters of the most unusual kind. It began to enter the public consciousness in a significant way back in 1961 with the case of Betty and Barney Hill, a married couple driving home through the mountains of New Hampshire. They saw a strange, silent, rotating light in the sky that seemed to follow them. They felt a strange, buzzing sensation. The next thing they knew, they were 35 miles further down the road, with no memory of how they got there. Their watches had stopped working. 2 hours of their lives had simply vanished. It was only under hypnotic regression that a terrifying story emerged, a story of being taken aboard a craft, of being examined by non-human entities. 14 years later, in 1975, a logger named Travis Walton was working with his crew in the forests of Arizona. As they drove home, they saw a golden, saucer-shaped craft hovering silently over the trees. Walton, against the pleas of his friends, got out of the truck and approached it. A brilliant beam of blue-green light shot out from the craft and struck him, throwing him through the air. His crew, panicking, fled the scene. When they returned, Travis Walton was gone. He remained missing for 5 days, sparking a massive manhunt and a police investigation that treated his crewmates as murder suspects. They all passed polygraph tests, insisting on their incredible story. Then, 5 days later, Walton reappeared on the side of a highway, dehydrated and confused, with his own fragmented memories of a strange, terrifying experience. These are not isolated stories. They are data points in a pattern that stretches across the globe and across decades. Lost hours, blank spaces in the tape of our lives. But these cases, as dramatic as they are, serve only as a prelude. They are the foothills to the mountain we are about to climb, because we are now going to turn our attention to a man who did not lose 2 hours or 5 days. We are going to explore the story of a man who stepped out of his car to find that 10 entire days of his existence had been meticulously and completely erased from time. And the question that haunts us, the question that will drive our journey tonight, is not just what happened during those 10 lost days, but what terrifying, world-altering truth did he bring back from the void? His arrival was a rupture in the fabric of the day. One moment, the familiar hum of the engine. The next, the jarring reality of Auckland's city limits. Yet, there was no sense of transition, no memory of the final miles. There was only a profound and inexplicable exhaustion, a weariness that settled deep in his bones, as if he had not been driving for a mere 3 hours, but had instead circumnavigated the globe on foot. His heart hammered against his ribs in a frantic, panicked rhythm, and his mouth was as dry as desert sand. This was not the normal fatigue of a road trip. This was something else entirely. This was the aftermath of an ordeal he could not remember. He tried to navigate the streets, the very streets that had been the backdrop of his life, the paths he could trace in his sleep, but they were suddenly alien. The turns were wrong, the landmarks unfamiliar, as if the city itself had been subtly rearranged while he was away. A cold knot of disorientation tightened in his stomach. He was a stranger in his own home. He glanced at his wrist, a simple, reflexive action to ground himself in time. His watch was dead. The hands were frozen, motionless. A minor annoyance, he thought. The battery must have given up. But as he looked at the dashboard of his car, the cold knot in his stomach turned to ice. The clock in his car, powered by a completely different source, had also stopped, and it had stopped at the exact same time as his wristwatch. 10:30 in the morning. A coincidence? It had to be a coincidence. The human mind seeks patterns. It seeks order in the chaos. 2 clocks stopping at once was strange, certainly, but not impossible. The fatigue, the disorientation, he must be unwell. That was the only logical explanation. He abandoned his errands, his plans for the day dissolving into a singular, desperate need for rest. He drove to his apartment, the unfamiliar streets eventually yielding to familiar ones, and collapsed into bed, surrendering to the crushing weight of his exhaustion. He told himself that sleep would reset the world. Sleep would make everything normal again. Except it did not. He awoke the next day, the heavy shroud of fatigue having lifted, replaced by the clear light of a new morning. He had left his hometown of Rotorua on a Monday. The drive was 3 hours. Therefore, the day he arrived should also have been Monday. After a night of deep sleep, today should be Tuesday. A simple, undeniable piece of logic. He turned on the radio, the cheerful voice of the morning host filling the room. The host wished everyone a wonderful Thursday. Thursday. The word did not compute. It was a piece of a puzzle from a different box. He must have misheard. He found a newspaper. The date was printed in bold black ink at the top of the page. It was indeed Thursday, but the date itself sent a fresh wave of ice water through his veins. It was not the Thursday of this week. It was Thursday of the Canopy 9. Next week. He stood there, in the quiet of his apartment, the newspaper trembling in his hands. He began to count. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That was 1 week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That was another 4 days. A week and 4 days. 10 days. 10 days had been carved out of his life with surgical precision, leaving no scar, no memory, only a gaping, terrifying void. Where had he been? What had happened in that chasm of time? The mind rebels against such an impossibility. It scrambles for purchase on the sheer cliffs of logic. Amnesia. Had he suffered some sort of fugue state, wandering for 10 days in a stupor? It did not feel right. His clothes were the same. His wallet was intact. There was no evidence of a 10-day journey. No hotel receipts. No unexplained charges. No dirt under his fingernails. It was as if he had been paused on that lonely stretch of road and simply unpaused 10 days later in the heart of Auckland. The universe had skipped, and he was the only one who felt the jolt. The days that followed were a waking dream. His car, once a reliable machine, became a vessel of strange maladies. It failed constantly, the engine sputtering, the electronics dying, as if it too was suffering from the after-effects of some unknown trauma. The repair bills mounted until he could no longer bear to look at the vehicle. It was a constant, physical reminder of the void. He sold it for a pittance, desperate to sever the last connection to that impossible Monday morning. Before handing over the keys, he cleaned out his personal belongings. In the glove compartment, nestled amongst old maps and receipts, were 2 small, glittering stones. They were crystals of pyrite, the mineral commonly known as fool's gold. He had never seen them before. He did not collect minerals. They had no business being in his car. Yet, there they were. And there was something else. His sketchbook. He always carried it with him. It was filled with his usual drawings, landscapes, portraits, idle thoughts given form. But as he flipped through the pages, he found several that were completely alien to him. They were covered in strange, intricate doodles and diagrams. Geometric patterns intertwined with symbols that seemed to whisper of a language he had never learned. They were not his style. They were not his hand. And yet, they were undeniably in his sketchbook. He stared at the drawings, a chilling thought creeping into his mind. If his hands had not drawn these, whose had? Or, more terrifyingly, what if they had, during a time his mind was not his own? The questions festered, unanswered. And then, the dreams began. They were not the usual chaotic narratives of sleep. They were persistent, recurring, and unnervingly coherent. Night after night, he was plunged back into a world of low light and profound silence. He would find himself suspended, feeling bodiless, surrounded by a faint, pulsating ring of blue light. In the distance, he could make out ghost-like entities, moving with a silent, ethereal grace, glowing with a faint golden aura. These were not dreams. They were echoes. They were fragments of a memory, trying to reassemble themselves in the dark theatre of his subconscious. He knew he was on the edge of either a breakthrough or a breakdown. He decided to fight for his sanity. He began to sleep with a notebook and a pen on his nightstand, a lifeline to the waking world. He resolved to capture these fragments before they could dissipate with the morning light. And slowly, painstakingly, it began to work. The images became clearer. The sounds began to have shape. The disjointed scenes started to link together, forming a narrative so incredible, so impossibly vast, that it threatened to shatter his understanding of everything he thought he knew about the world, about humanity, and about his own place in the universe. The memories were returning. And with them, he was finally able to go back to that Monday, back to the road. The fog was thick that morning, a heavy, wet blanket that muffled the world in a grey silence. He was driving slower than usual, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Then came the first sign that something was wrong, a strange feeling, as if the world was suddenly moving through water. Everything was in slow motion. His vision blurred at the edges. A low, powerful vibration started in the steering wheel, a deep hum that resonated through his entire body. The vibration grew, escalating into a violent shaking. The steering wheel locked in his hands, and he lost all control of the car. The vehicle, his entire world, was shaking apart around him. And then, nothing. The shaking stopped. The sound stopped. The light stopped. There was only a profound and total blackness. And then, slowly, a new sensation. A feeling of being lifted, of being weightless, suspended. He looked down, trying to see his own body, but there was nothing to see. He was not sure he even had one. And all around him, a gentle, silent, impossible ring of blue light began to glow. The lost 10 days had begun. For a time, there was only the silence. Alec's world had shrunk to the four walls of his apartment, a self-imposed prison where the only inmate was an impossible secret. The calendar had become his enemy, each turned page, a mocking reminder of the 10-day chasm in his life. The strange drawings in his sketchbook and the 2 glittering pyrite crystals were his only companions, physical anchors to an experience his conscious mind refused to acknowledge. He existed in a state of suspended disbelief, floating in the quiet aftermath of a storm he could not remember. And then, one afternoon, the silence was broken by a sharp, insistent knock on the door. Standing on his doorstep were 2 men. They did not look like police officers or government officials, not in the way one sees on television. One was a New Zealander, his face plain and unremarkable, the kind of man you would pass on the street and instantly forget. He did the talking, his voice calm and measured. The other was different. He was British, dressed in a suit that seemed just a little too formal for the occasion, and he carried himself with an air of detached authority. He rarely spoke, but his eyes were constantly moving, cataloguing the room, cataloguing Alec, with a disconcerting intensity. They identified themselves as scientists, members of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, the DSIR. The New Zealander presented his identification card. As he did, Alec caught a glimpse of a second card tucked behind it, a card that read, Royal Institute for International Affairs. They said they had some questions about his car, the one he had just sold. They claimed it was a routine inquiry, but their questions were not routine. They were specific, probing, hinting at a knowledge they had no right to possess. They asked about his journey, about any unusual phenomena he might have witnessed, about any gaps in his memory. Alec, his mind reeling, gave them nothing. He claimed ignorance, feigned confusion. How could he begin to explain a truth that he himself did not understand? The men did not press the issue. They were unnervingly polite. They left as quietly as they had arrived, with a simple promise that they would be back. Alec did not know it then, but he had just become another data point in a vast and terrifying mythology, the modern folklore of the Men in Black. These stories had been whispered among UFO witnesses for decades, tales of strange, emotionless men dressed in dark suits, appearing out of nowhere to silence those who had seen too much. The legend truly began to take shape in the public consciousness around 1953, when a man named Albert K. Bender, the founder of an amateur UFO research organization, abruptly shut down his entire operation. He claimed he had been visited by 3 men in black suits who had warned him to stop his research, presenting him with information so startling that it had made him physically ill. They were not, he hinted, from any known government agency. Who are these men? Are they simply agents of a deeply classified government program? A real-world X-Files division tasked with maintaining the veil of secrecy at any cost? Or are they something else entirely? Witnesses often describe them as being slightly off. Their skin is sometimes unnaturally pale, their speech patterns stilted and strange, their movements robotic. Some theorize they are not human at all, but biological androids or holographic projections, a non-human enforcement agency designed to police humanity's awareness of a greater cosmic truth. Feeling the cold grip of paranoia, Alec decided to run. He packed his things, left his apartment, and moved to another part of the city, sharing his new address with no one. He sought anonymity, hoping to dissolve back into the faceless crowd. It was a futile effort. A few weeks later, there was another knock on the door. It was the same 2 men. This time, the politeness was gone. replaced by a steely insistence. The questions were more direct, more pointed. They were no longer inquiring. They were demanding. Alec held his ground, claiming he had nothing more to tell them. He asked them to leave and never come back. The next evening, he returned to his new apartment and felt it the moment he stepped inside. The air was different. A deep, primal instinct screamed that his space had been violated. Someone had been there. He did a frantic search of the apartment. Nothing was broken. Nothing of monetary value had been stolen. A common burglar would have ransacked the place, but this was a clean, surgical intrusion. Everything was exactly as he had left it, except for two things. The two pyrite crystals, the fool's gold that had mysteriously appeared in his car, were gone from his desk. And when he opened his sketchbook, he found that several pages had been carefully, precisely torn from the binding. The pages containing the strange, alien diagrams, the drawings his mind could not remember but his soul knew were important, had been excised from his life. They had taken the only physical evidence. They had removed the only proof that what was happening to him was real. A strange sense of calm washed over Alec, the calm that comes after a violent storm. He thought to himself, "Oh well, they got what they were looking for. Now at least they will leave me alone." He could not have been more wrong. This was not the end of his ordeal. This was the ignition. The pressure applied by these silent, shadowy men was the final catalyst needed to crack the dam in his mind. The stolen evidence did not bury the secret deeper. It did the opposite. It set the memory free. For now, with nothing left to lose, his brain finally began to show him what had truly happened during the 10 lost days. The raid on his apartment did not bury the secret. It unearthed it. The pressure, the paranoia, the violation of his sanctuary. It was the final key turning in a lock he never knew existed. The dam of his subconscious, built to protect him from a truth too vast to comprehend, finally broke. And in the flood of returning memory, he was no longer in his small, lonely apartment in Auckland. He was back in the sterile, silent, and unnervingly calm environment of the lightship. He found himself in a circular white room, a space devoid of corners or edges, where the very concept of size was difficult to grasp. The light was everywhere and nowhere at once, emanating from the walls themselves, which seemed to possess a faint, honeycomb pattern deep within their structure. There were no distractions here, no external sounds, no shifting shadows. There was only a profound sense of tranquility, a peace so absolute it felt ancient. And in this perfect stillness, he was not alone. The being he had come to know as Giza was with him. She was unlike any human he had ever seen, yet undeniably female. Her neck was long and graceful, her shoulders sloped downwards into slender arms, but it was her eyes that held him captive. They were large and luminous, a colour somewhere between violet and blue, and they held an expression of immense age, of a wisdom that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. There was no menace in her presence, no threat, only an overwhelming sense of compassion. She did not speak with her mouth, but her thoughts, clear and precise as crystal, formed within his mind. "It is time," her thoughts resonated, a soundless melody of concepts and emotions. "It is time for you to understand why you are here. It is time for you to learn the truth, not only of us, but of yourselves. I will tell you more of your own race's personal history, for it is important that you should know your own past. And you must understand this, above all else. Evolution, as you have been taught it, is a myth." The thought concept struck Alec's mind with the force of a physical blow. A myth? The entire foundation of modern biology, the slow, grinding, billion-year process of natural selection, was a fabrication? Giza continued, her thoughts weaving a new and staggering tapestry of creation. "The changes your species has undergone were never slow, and they were never random. They were always planned. Nothing in this universe, past, present, or future, is left to chance. Long before your written history began, in a time you would call the deep past, our ancestors, whom you may call the elders, were space travelers. They roamed the galaxy, searching for worlds that held the precious spark of life, and they found Earth. They saw a world teeming with potential, a perfect cradle for a new and ambitious project. They did not find intelligent life here," Xena's thoughts explained. not as you would define it, but they found its precursor. A primitive hominid, living in harmony with the planet, but possessing a latent genetic capacity for something far greater. The elders saw this potential, this raw material, and so they began their work. Through a series of careful, precise genetic experiments, they collaborated to uplift this creature. They altered its DNA, expanded its cranial capacity, and unlocked its potential for self-awareness, for complex language, for abstract thought. They took an animal of the earth and, in their own image, they forged a new being. They forged you, Homo sapiens. What Alec was hearing in that sterile white room on a ship beyond the sky was not a new story. It was, in fact, perhaps the oldest story ever recorded by humankind, a story that has been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years, dismissed by our modern world as primitive myth. To find its echo, we must travel back, not through the cold vacuum of space, but through the deep currents of time, to the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Here, some 6,000 years ago, the world's first great civilization, the civilization of Sumer, bloomed into existence. The Sumerians gave us writing, the wheel, law, agriculture, and astronomy. They mapped the stars with an accuracy that would not be matched for millennia, and on thousands of clay tablets, inscribed with their intricate cuneiform script, they wrote down their history. For over a century, we have viewed these texts as elaborate mythologies, allegories for the seasons, and tales of primitive gods. But in the mid-20th century, a scholar named Zecharia Sitchin proposed a revolutionary and deeply controversial idea. What if the Sumerians were not writing myth at all? What if they were writing history? Sitchin dedicated his life to translating these ancient tablets, and the story he uncovered was a mirror image of the one Xena was revealing to Alec. The Sumerian texts speak of a race of powerful beings who came down from the heavens. They called them the Anunnaki, a name which translates to those who from heaven to earth came. These beings, the tablets claim, came from a 12th planet in our solar system, a planet named Nibiru, which follows a vast 3,600-year elliptical orbit that brings it into the inner solar system only periodically. According to the Sumerian record, the Anunnaki did not come to Earth as benevolent creators, but as prospectors. Their own world's atmosphere was failing, and they had discovered that a shield of finely powdered gold suspended in their upper atmosphere could save their planet. The one place in the solar system with abundant gold was Earth, and so they came here and established their first colony, a gold mining operation. But the work was grueling. The Anunnaki, who were tasked with the labor, eventually rebelled. They needed a worker, a slave race. And so, as the tablets describe in detail, their chief scientist, a being named Enki, proposed a solution. They would take a primitive creature, already living on Earth, a hominid, and they would upgrade it. They would, as the texts state, bind upon it the image of the gods. They performed a procedure we would now call in vitro fertilization, mixing the egg of a female hominid with the essence of a young Anunnaki male. The result was a hybrid, a new being they called the Adamu, the first modern human, a worker, engineered to serve its masters. The parallels are too precise to be ignored. Xena's elders and the Sumerian Anunnaki, Xena's tale of genetic experiments, and the Sumerian account of the creation of the Adamu. Our ancient ancestors, all across the world, did not worship metaphorical gods of the sun and moon. They wrote of real, physical beings who descended from the sky in fiery chariots, who possessed incredible technology, who lived for thousands of years, and who created humanity for their own purposes. We looked upon these hyper-advanced biological beings and, with our primitive understanding, we called them gods. We were a species with amnesia, worshipping our own creators. Is there any proof of this in our own biology? Perhaps. Scientists are still baffled by what they call junk DNA, the 97% of the human genome that appears to serve no purpose. Is it truly junk, the discarded remnants of evolution? Or could it be the hardware of our original creators, a vast genetic inheritance that was deliberately switched off, leaving us with only a fraction of our intended potential. There is also the mystery of human chromosome 2. All other great apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes. Humans have only 23. Geneticists have discovered that our chromosome 2 is the result of two ancestral chromosomes having been fused together, end to end. This is a massive, unprecedented genetic event that is one of the key markers that separates us from our primate relatives. Was this fusion a 1 in a billion random accident of evolution? Or was it the clear, undeniable signature of a deliberate, intelligent act of genetic engineering? Alec sat in the silent white room, the weight of this new history settling upon him. His entire understanding of his own identity, of what it meant to be human, had been dismantled in a matter of moments. We were not the masters of our planet, risen from the primordial ooze through sheer chance and determination. We were a creation, a product, an engineered species, placed upon this world for a purpose we had long forgotten. And as this staggering truth solidified in his mind, it gave rise to an even more terrifying question. If the elders were our creators, our benevolent parents, then who, or what, had come after them to corrupt their creation? Who was the dark force that had crippled our DNA and set humanity on a path of fear and self-destruction? The first great secret had been revealed, but it was only the gateway to a far deeper and far more terrifying darkness. Alec's mind, still reeling from the revelation of humanity's engineered origin, struggled to grasp the sheer scale of it all. The concept was too abstract, a truth too immense to be contained within the confines of his own small life. As if sensing his cognitive dissonance, Xena's thoughts gently guided him from the abstract to the tangible. She provided an anchor, a physical touchstone on planet Earth that served as a testament to the Elder's legacy. Before our time here was done, Xena's thoughts communicated, a gentle stream of understanding flowing into his mind. Before circumstances required our departure, we did not leave our creation empty-handed. We left behind a seed of knowledge, a legacy in stone, so that in due time you might rediscover your own magnificent potential. You have spent millennia staring at this legacy, trying to solve its riddle, never understanding its true purpose. Your people call it the Great Pyramid of Giza. Alec's mind flashed with the iconic image, the triangular silhouette against a desert sky, a tomb for a king, a monument built by slaves. This was the history he had been taught. It is not a tomb, Xena corrected, her thought, form tinged with something akin to melancholic patience. It was never a tomb. The pharaohs who came later found this great structure, already ancient in their time. They could not comprehend its function, so they revered it as a relic of the gods, building their own crude copies in its shadow and claiming the original as their own. What the elders left behind was something far more profound. It was the blueprint of an older model of transport ship, yes, but it was also a functional machine. The pyramid shape is, by far, the most efficient design for drawing and concentrating energy from a planet's electromagnetic field and its telluric currents. It is a key, a dormant engine, a promise. For thousands of years we have stood in the shadow of this monument, and we have asked the wrong questions. We have asked, which pharaoh built this? And how did they move the stones? We have accepted the textbook answer that it is a grandiose tomb, despite the glaring fact that no mummy, no treasure, and not a single hieroglyphic inscription declaring it to be the tomb of the pharaoh Khufu has ever been found within its stark, unadorned chambers. The granite coffer in the king's chamber is a rough, lidless box, completely alien to the ornate sarcophagi found in the Valley of the Kings. We have been trying to fit a piece of hyper-advanced technology into the neat little box of primitive dynastic history, and it has never fit. Perhaps it is time we started asking the questions an engineer might ask. This is precisely what Christopher Dunn, a machinist with decades of experience in high-precision manufacturing, did. He looked at the Great Pyramid, not as a pile of rocks, but as a machine, and what he found suggests a purpose so advanced it borders on science fiction. He theorized that the Great Pyramid was, in fact, a massive power plant, designed to harness the natural vibrations of the Earth and convert them into wireless energy. According to his theory, The process began deep beneath the bedrock. The subterranean chamber, carved into the earth below the pyramid, would have been subjected to pulses of water from the Nile, creating a phenomenon known as a water hammer, generating acoustic vibrations. These vibrations, the very pulse of the planet, were the fuel. The energy then traveled up into the pyramid's core, specifically to the so-called Queen's Chamber. Dunn proposed that the two mysterious, narrow shafts leading out from this chamber were not for ventilation, but were chemical inlets. One would have delivered a stream of hydrated zinc chloride, the other a dilute hydrochloric acid. When these two chemicals mixed within the chamber, they would have a vigorous reaction, producing enormous volumes of pressurized hydrogen gas. This hydrogen, along with the amplified sonic vibrations from below, would then be channeled up the magnificent Grand Gallery. This incredible, corbelled hallway, a masterpiece of architectural engineering, was not a staircase for souls. Dunn identified it as a massive resonance chamber. The notches and grooves along its walls were designed to hold a series of acoustic resonators. As the combined energies passed through the gallery, these resonators would vibrate in sympathy, converting the random frequencies into a single, pure, powerful sonic chord. The entire gallery was a musical instrument, designed to amplify and tune the energy of the planet. Finally, this immense acoustic power was focused into the king's chamber. This chamber is a marvel of granite construction, a material rich in quartz crystals. When subjected to intense sound pressure, quartz crystals vibrate, releasing electrons, a phenomenon known as the piezoelectric effect. The king's chamber, Dunn argues, was the power center of the entire pyramid. It was a transducer, converting the immense sonic energy from the Grand Gallery into pure microwave energy. This energy could then be beamed out from the pyramid, providing a clean, wireless power source for a civilization that possessed the technology to receive it. But the pyramid is not just a machine, it is a map. In the 1980s, the author and researcher Robert Bauval discovered that the layout of the three pyramids on the Giza plateau is a perfect terrestrial mirror of the three stars in Orion's belt. The alignment is precise, not only in their positions, but even in their relative brightness, which corresponds to the size of the pyramids. Furthermore, using computer simulations, he found that the alignment of the Giza pyramids with the Nile River perfectly matches the alignment of Orion's belt with the Milky Way galaxy, but not as it appears today. It matches the sky as it was in the year 10,500 BC, a time thousands of years before the accepted age of Egyptian civilization. It is also a mathematical codex written in stone. The dimensions of the Great Pyramid encode some of the most fundamental constants of our universe. The ratio of its height to its perimeter is the same as the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference, giving us the value of pi with stunning accuracy. Its geometry contains the golden ratio, phi, a universal constant found in everything from the spiral of a galaxy to the structure of human DNA. The builders possessed a knowledge of mathematics and geodesy that is profoundly out of place for their supposed time, suggesting a science that was not discovered, but inherited. And then, there is the simple, brute force impossibility of its construction. It is built from over 2 million blocks of stone, many weighing more than an elephant, some weighing up to 70 tons. These blocks are fitted together with a precision of 1/100th of an inch, a feat that would challenge our own laser-guided construction technology today. Yet we are told this was accomplished with copper chisels and stone hammers. We find evidence of core drills that cut through solid granite, with a feed rate 500 times greater than modern diamond-tipped drills. We find perfectly flat surfaces and sharp, right-angled interior corners that defy explanation. What Zena revealed to Alec was the key that unlocks all of these mysteries. The Great Pyramid was not built by Khufu. It was found by Khufu. It is the work of a civilization that possessed a complete understanding of acoustics, chemistry, astronomy, and the very fabric of physics. It is a power plant. It is a star map. It is an equation. It is a silent, waiting engine left behind by our creators, its true purpose buried, not by sand, but by our own refusal to see what has been standing before us all along. As the echoes of Zena's revelation about the Great Pyramid settled in Alec's mind. A profound sense of awe and wonder filled him. He had been given a glimpse of humanity's magnificent inheritance, a connection to a past far grander than he had ever imagined. But this feeling of enlightenment was fleeting, a fragile dawn that was about to be swallowed by a far more ancient and oppressive night. The awe was replaced by a chilling question that rose unbidden from the depths of his soul. If this was our intended path, if this was our legacy, what went so horribly wrong? Xena's thoughts answered his unspoken query, and the tranquility of the white room was pierced by a note of deep, cosmic sorrow. Your race was a vessel of immense potential, she communicated. A perfect synthesis of the Elder's genetic gifts and the vibrant life force of planet Earth. You were meant to be guardians, co-creators, but you were not left to develop in peace. After the Elders departed, another force was drawn to this world. It was not an empire seeking conquest in the way you would understand it. It was something far more insidious, a parasitic consciousness, a traveler of the cosmic darkness, and it found in your burgeoning species the perfect host. Amar, this force is known to us as the enemy of enlightenment, Xena's thoughts continued, the concepts now feeling colder, sharper in Alec's mind. It is not a being you can see or touch, for it is a vibration, a frequency that has aligned itself with your planet. It is in the air you breathe and everywhere about you. When it discovered humanity, it saw a species capable of producing a very specific, and to it, very potent form of energy. An emotion that is, in fact, quite rare in most of the advanced life forms in the galaxy. The emotion you call fear. This dark force took hold of the human race and became a part of it. It did this by altering your genetic structure once again. But this was not an upgrade. It was a crippling. A key portion of your DNA, the part that connected you to your higher perceptions, to the ability to see beyond the veil of this single dimension, was deactivated. In its place, the capacity for intense, systemic, and existential fear was amplified. Your development was set back thousands of years. You were disconnected from your creators and became a food source. This force feeds on your fear. It thrives on your anxiety, your anger, your despair. It has engineered your societies, your religions, and your histories for a single purpose: to keep you in a state of low vibrational consciousness, to turn your world into a farm, and to harvest the emotional energy you produce. Once again, the story Xena told Alec in that otherworldly space was not a new one. It is a warning that has been desperately trying to reach us for 2,000 years, a message that was so dangerous to the established order that its followers were hunted as heretics and their writings were burned and buried in the desert sands. In the year 1945, near the town of Nag Hammadi in Egypt, a clay jar was unearthed, containing a library of ancient texts. These were the lost Gospels of the Gnostics, a mystical branch of early Christianity who held a radically different view of our world. The Gnostics taught that the material universe was not the divine creation of a benevolent God. Instead, they claimed it was the flawed creation of a lesser, ignorant being they called the demiurge, a false god who had trapped our divine spirits within physical bodies. But they also warned of the servants of this demiurge, a group of non-physical parasitic entities they called the archons. According to these forbidden texts, the archons are inorganic beings from outside our solar system who envy humanity for our divine spark, our capacity for imagination and creation. They are, the Gnostics wrote, psychic vampires. They cannot create, so they must imitate and deceive. Their primary method of control is illusion, what the Coptic texts call hal, which means simulation. They manipulate our perception of reality, locking us in a system of belief and dogma, and their primary source of sustenance, their food, is the negative emotional energy of humanity. They feed on the psychic fallout from our fear, our grief, our rage, and our lust. They are the puppet masters, whispering into the ears of rulers, instigating conflict, and fostering ignorance, all to ensure their food supply remains plentiful. Xena's dark force and the Gnostic archons are one and the same, a parasitic intelligence that has infested the human mind. In our modern era, this ancient Gnostic warning has been reimagined and reinterpreted in an even more direct and disturbing form by controversial researchers like David Icke. His theory proposes that these archontic parasites are not merely ethereal spirits, but a physical, interdimensional race of reptilian beings from the Draco star system. For millennia, Icke argues, this reptilian race has been secretly controlling planet Earth. They have done this by interbreeding with certain human bloodlines, creating hybrid families that are able to shapeshift between their reptilian and human forms. These hybrid bloodlines, according to the theory, are the royal families of Europe, the political dynasties of America, and the international banking families who control the world's finances. From their positions of power in government, media, and banking, they have constructed a global prison. They create wars. They orchestrate financial collapses. They promote divisive ideologies, all for the singular purpose of keeping humanity in a constant state of fear, stress, and conflict. The low vibrational emotional energy produced by this suffering is not just a byproduct of their control, it is the entire point of the system. It is their sustenance, the negative energy that allows them to operate in this dimension. Xena's dark force, the Gnostic archons, Icke's reptilian elite, it is the same horrifying story, told in the language of telepathy, of ancient mysticism, and of modern conspiracy. It is the story of a predator and its prey, and the farm they have built is all around us. You need only open your eyes to see the mechanisms of the harvest. Turn on the news. The 24-hour cycle is not designed to inform you, it is designed to frighten you. It is a constant, relentless barrage of disaster, crime, war, and political outrage, carefully curated to create a baseline of anxiety and a feeling of powerlessness. If it bleeds, it leads, is not just a cynical motto, it is the operational manual for an energy farm. Look at our political systems. They are built on a foundation of divide and conquer, left versus right, liberal versus conservative, nation versus nation. We are intentionally pitted against each other, encouraged to hate our neighbors for their differing opinions, to live in a perpetual state of outrage at the other side. This division is the engine of the machine, generating a constant supply of the anger and animosity on which these entities thrive. Look at our financial systems. The concept of debt-based currency creates an artificial scarcity that keeps the vast majority of humanity in a state of perpetual struggle for survival. The stress of paying bills, the fear of poverty, the anxiety of an uncertain future, these are not accidental flaws in the system. They are the system, working to perfection. Xena's revelation was the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle. The Elders gave humanity the genetic hardware to be gods, to explore the universe, to create with infinite imagination. But the dark force, the archontic parasite, hacked our system. It installed a virus, the virus of fear that has been running our collective consciousness for millennia. The endless cycle of human history, the wars, the genocides, the inquisitions, the senseless cruelty, it is not truly our nature. It is the behavior of a traumatized, infected species, acting out the programming of its invisible parasite. The battle for the soul of humanity is not against any foreign nation or political party. It is the battle against this ancient, fear-feeding intelligence. The first step in that battle is not to pick up a weapon, but simply to realize that the prison exists. To understand that your fear is not your own. It is their food. And the moment you stop feeding it, the moment you choose understanding over anger, compassion over judgment, and love over fear, is the moment you begin to starve the beast and reclaim your stolen inheritance. The weight of Xena's last revelation was immense. To learn that humanity was a species infected, its history, a long, slow fever dream orchestrated by a parasitic force, was a truth that threatened to unmoor Alec from reality itself. He was adrift in a sea of cosmic horror. Seeing his distress, Xena's thoughts shifted, offering not a comfort, but a context. She began to show him that the tragedy of Earth was but a single act in a much older and much larger drama of survival, catastrophe, and loss. To fully understand your present, Xena's thoughts began, their tone now one of a historian recounting a foundational epic. You must understand our past. For my people were not always the travelers you see before you. We are not from Haven, we are survivors. Our story, like yours, is one of a home that was lost. It begins on a world that no longer exists, a world that once occupied the fourth orbit from your sun, a cold and distant planet your astronomers have never known. We called it Kyber. Kyber was a world of ice and water, much of it frozen year-round in its long, elliptical journey around the Sunday. Life there developed under challenging conditions, leading to the emergence of two distinct, intelligent races, both born from the same primordial spark but shaped by vastly different environments. On the frozen surface, a race of small, furry beings evolved. They chose not the path of technology, but the path of inner harmony. They lived in complete symbiosis with the planet's flora and fauna, developing profound psychic abilities, their consciousness attuned to the very heartbeat of Kyber. They were a people of peace and deep wisdom. My ancestors, Xena continued, were the other race. We were the subterranean dwellers. To escape the brutal cold of the surface, we built our civilizations deep underground, warmed by the geothermal heat of the planet's core. Necessity made us technologists. We became a race of scientists, engineers, and explorers, our intellect honed by the constant challenge of our environment. We were smaller in stature than the surface dwellers, more delicate, but our minds were endlessly inquisitive. It was my people who first dreamed of the stars, and it was we who first built the ships to reach them. We achieved space travel, and in time, we explored Kyber's 3 moons. We were on the verge of becoming a true interstellar species. At the same time, our most brilliant minds were conducting experiments on the planet itself, not with the physics of propulsion, but with the very fabric of reality. They were researching interdimensional travel, seeking to unlock the secrets of slipping between the folds of existence. It was the greatest scientific undertaking in our history, and it led to our complete and utter destruction. Something went terribly wrong. Xena's thoughts conveyed a wave of ancient, inherited grief. The experiments became unstable. A chain reaction began deep within the planet's core, a tear in the dimensional fabric that our science could not contain. In a matter of moments, our entire world was annihilated. Kyber, with all its history, its life, its beauty, was shattered into a billion pieces, a sudden and violent end to a planetary dream. But just before the final cataclysm, a small remnant of my people enacted a desperate plan for survival. We had already been converting one of our moons into a long-range spacecraft, a generational ark. On this moonship, we gathered what we could of our technology, our knowledge, and a collection of Kyber's life forms, including a brave contingent of the hairy surface dwellers. It was, in the tradition of your own legends, an ark. We launched from Kyber's orbit, just as our home world ceased to exist. Our first destination was the nearest habitable world, Mars. At that time, it had an atmosphere and liquid water. We hoped to make it our new home, but the destruction of Kyber had catastrophic effects on the entire solar system. The shockwave and debris field ripped through Mars, stripping away its atmosphere and boiling off its water, rendering it uninhabitable for surface life. Our journey of survival had to continue. The next safe harbor was the system that orbited your sun's 3rd planet, Earth, and its moon. The hairy surface dwellers, being more naturally suited to the prevailing conditions of your world, were given the chance to settle on Earth. My ancestors, the technologically advanced subterranean people, used Earth's then moon as our home base, our temporary refuge as we planned our next move. A destroyed planet between Mars and Jupiter, a great migration of survivors to Earth. To our modern ears, this sounds like pure fiction. And yet, the idea of a lost world, a phantom planet in our own solar system, is an echo that has haunted astronomers for centuries. In the late 1700s, a formula known as the Titius-Bode law gained popularity. It was a simple mathematical sequence that, with surprising accuracy, predicted the orbital distances of the planets from the Sunday. It worked for Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. It even correctly predicted the orbit of Uranus before it was officially discovered. But the formula had one glaring problem. It predicted that there should be a planet in the massive, empty gap between Mars and Jupiter. For decades, astronomers called this the missing planet. the search for this lost world began. On the very first day of the 1800s, an Italian astronomer named Giuseppe Piazzi discovered a small celestial body in that exact orbital path. He named it Ceres. Soon after, another was found, then another. Today, we know this region is home to millions of objects, from the dwarf planet Ceres to countless smaller rocks and dust. We call it the asteroid belt. The mainstream scientific explanation is that this is simply leftover material from the formation of the solar system, a planet that never managed to form due to the immense gravitational influence of Jupiter. But another, more dramatic theory has always lingered in the background. What if the asteroid belt is not a planet that failed to form, but the shattered remains of a planet that was destroyed? Is this belt of rubble the tombstone of a world, the wreckage of Xena's Kyber? But Xena's story contained another, even more outlandish claim, that her people used Earth's original moon as their base, and that the moon we see today is a replacement. This seems, at first, to be an insurmountable leap of logic. The moon is the most familiar object in our sky, a constant, silent companion. And yet, when we look closer, our moon is an object of profound and unsettling strangeness. Consider the perfect solar eclipse. The sun is 400 times larger than the moon, and it is also, by a staggering coincidence, 400 times farther away. This celestial geometry means that from the surface of the Earth, the sun and the moon appear to be the exact same size in the sky, allowing the moon to perfectly block out the sun's disk, revealing the glorious corona. The odds of such a perfect cosmic alignment happening by chance are, quite frankly, astronomical. No other known planet-moon combination in the solar system exhibits this perfect symmetry. Consider the moon's composition. Rocks brought back by the Apollo missions revealed a startling makeup. They contained processed metals like brass, and elements like uranium-236 and neptunium-237, which have never been found to occur naturally. The moon is also incredibly ancient, with some samples appearing to be older than the Earth itself. And then, there is the most famous anomaly of all. During the Apollo missions, NASA deliberately crashed spent lunar modules and rocket stages onto the moon's surface to test its composition with seismic equipment. The results were shocking. On one occasion, the impact of a lunar module equivalent to 1 ton of TNT caused the entire moon to reverberate, to vibrate like a massive, hollow bell for over 3 hours. The lead scientist for the experiment, Ken Johnson, later stated, "The moon rang like a bell." This led to the incredible but persistent theory that the moon is, in fact, hollow, or at least has a massive open space beneath a hard, artificial shell. This is supported by the fact that lunar craters are strangely shallow. Craters of immense width are rarely more than a few miles deep, as if the impacting meteorites struck an incredibly dense, armored hull beneath the dusty surface. Xena's final piece of history completes this impossible picture. Her people, the subterranean survivors of Kyber, eventually found a new, stable home for their moonship in a distant star system. This became Haven. But to simply leap away from Earth's orbit would have caused gravitational chaos for your planet, triggering catastrophic tides and earthquakes. So, in order not to disturb the delicate balance of the world that had become home to their fellow Kyberian survivors, they did something extraordinary. They constructed and positioned a replacement, a massive, hollow, artificial sphere. They parked our current moon in orbit around the Earth, a silent, hollow sentinel, to take the place of the one they were taking with them. Alec sat in silence, his mind struggling to build a new map of reality, one that now included a shattered planet, a dead Mars, and an artificial moon. He was not just a man on a strange ship. He was a descendant of a lost Earth, living in a solar system that was a graveyard, a crime scene, and a refugee camp all at once. The history of the sun and its planets was not a quiet story of gravitational clockwork. It was a violent epic of destruction, survival, and secrets hidden in plain sight, the greatest of which was hanging in the sky above our heads every single night. The cosmic history of a shattered planet and a hollow moon was a truth so vast it bordered on the mythological, a drama that had played out over millions of years. Alec's mind, still stretching to accommodate this new timeline, was about to be wrenched back from the deep past into the terrifying immediacy of the present. For Xena's story was not over. The drama of Earth's colonization and corruption had a new act, and a new set of players who had entered the game while the elders were away. The ancient, parasitic dark force was not the only threat. A newer, more tangible conspiracy was now unfolding, a secret war being waged not in the realm of consciousness, but in the deserts, laboratories, and dark corridors of power on Earth itself. For most of your history, Xena's thoughts conveyed, a new sense of urgency in their tone. The struggle for your planet was a subtle one, a battle for the soul of your species. But in the course of your last century, a new factor was introduced. You have not been the only intelligent biological species operating on Earth. Long before you appeared in your modern form, another race of visiting aliens, known to a few of your researchers as the Greys, had established themselves here, preferring to live in the shadows. For most of human history, Xena continued, they kept their distance. But since the second half of your 20th century, they became actively involved with a powerful faction of your own species, what one of your presidents would later call the military-industrial cartel. The Greys and this human faction discovered that they shared an agenda, and an unholy alliance was formed, hidden from the rest of your world. The mid-20th century. Xena's timeline was specific. To understand the genesis of this dark bargain, we must travel back to a single, pivotal event, a moment that shattered the mundane reality of the post-war world and created a secret that would fester for generations. The year was 1947. The place, the desolate high desert of New Mexico. In early July, a rancher named Mac Brazel discovered a field of strange, scattered debris on his property. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. There were metallic beams that were as light as balsa wood, but could not be bent or broken. There were pieces of a foil-like material that, when crumpled into a ball, would unfold itself, leaving no crease or mark. The local Army airfield at Roswell was notified. An intelligence officer, Major Jesse Marcel, was sent to investigate. He was so impressed by the unusual nature of the debris that he authorized a press release, and on July 8th, the Roswell Daily Record ran a stunning, world-changing headline, RAF captures flying saucer on ranch. For a brief moment, the secret was out, but less than 24 hours later, the story was aggressively retracted. The military held a press conference, claiming the entire incident was a mistake. Major Marcel was forced to pose for photographs with the tattered remains of a common weather balloon, a humiliating reversal. The official story was sealed. There was nothing to see here. But the Roswell incident was not the crash of a weather balloon. It was the crash of a consensus reality. It was the moment a deeply classified faction within the United States government came into possession of irrefutable, physical proof of extraterrestrial technology and, according to numerous whistleblowers and deathbed confessions from military personnel who were there, the bodies of its non-human occupants. And in that moment, they made a choice. They chose not to share this world-changing discovery with humanity, but to classify it above the secret of the atomic bomb, creating a wall of secrecy so absolute that it required the formation of a government within the government, a breakaway group with its own budget, its own agenda, and no public oversight. What does such a group do with such a secret? The answer, according to a persistent and terrifying thread of conspiracy research, is that they made a deal. Sometime in the years following Roswell, a formal contact was established with the surviving members of this alien race, the Greys. A treaty was negotiated in the deepest levels of secrecy. The terms were simple and monstrous. The Greys would provide the shadow government with advanced technology, allowing them to leapfrog decades ahead in weapon systems, energy, and propulsion. In exchange, the shadow government would allow the Greys to operate on Earth with impunity. They would help to cover up their existence and would permit them to abduct a limited number of human citizens for what was described as a medical and scientific study program. Xena, in her silent communication with Alec, confirmed the existence of this terrible bargain. But she also revealed the true, horrifying agenda of the Greys, an agenda far more sinister than simple scientific curiosity. The Greys are a dying race, Xena explained. Their genetic makeup has degraded to the point where they can no longer reproduce effectively. Their so-called scientific study of your people is, in fact, a desperate and sprawling genetic harvesting program. Their ultimate agenda is to introduce a new breed of being onto your planet, a hybrid, combining their own psychic and intellectual abilities with the physical robustness and genetic vitality of the human race. It is a program designed to ensure their own survival by creating our replacements. And the plan has a second, even more terrible phase. Her thoughts continued, a chilling image forming in Alec's mind. The Greys, together with their human military scientist partners, are secretly creating this new hybrid race to have a specific genetic trait, a total immunity to a certain, highly lethal virus. Their plan is simple. Once the hybrid program is complete and their new race is ready, they will release that lethal virus amongst the general population of Earth. The human race as you know it will be wiped out in a great pandemic, leaving the planet free for their hybrid children to inherit. It is the same evolutionary principle that saw the Neanderthals go extinct when your own ancestors, Homo sapiens, appeared. But this time, it will not be a natural process. It will be an engineered extinction. Oh, this horrifying plan is not a distant, future threat. Its evidence is all around us, hidden within the terrifying and often ridiculed accounts of thousands of UFO abductees from all corners of the globe. The story of Betty and Barney Hill was not just about missing time, it was about the medical procedure. Betty described being examined by small grey beings with large, dark eyes, who inserted a long, painful needle into her navel. The common threads that run through decades of abduction testimony are a clinical, emotionless examination, a focus on the human reproductive system, the extraction of eggs and sperm, and the presentation of strange, hybrid-looking babies to the abductees. These are not random, frightening dreams. They are the consistent, traumatic memories of the unwilling participants in a systematic, planetary-wide genetic harvesting program. They are the receipts for the price that was paid in the shadow government's deal with the devil. And where is the technology gained from this deal being studied and reverse-engineered? The answer lies in the Nevada desert, at a place that for decades did not officially exist. Area 51. In 1989, a man named Bob Lazar came forward with an incredible story. He claimed to have been a physicist working at a secret facility south of Area 51 called SFOR. His job, he said, was to help reverse-engineer the propulsion systems of one of 9 captured alien flying saucers held there. He described seeing the craft, reading briefing documents that detailed the history of the government's relationship with the small, grey beings from the Zeta Reticuli star system, and witnessing test flights of the craft. Lazar's story, and others like it, paints a picture of a vast, secret world, a breakaway civilization with technology far beyond anything known in the public sphere, all of it derived from the alliance with the Greys. This is the ultimate reason for the cover-up. It is not about preventing public panic. It is about protecting the greatest military and technological advantage in human history. It is about concealing the original sin of this shadow government, that in their lust for power and technology, they betrayed the entire human race, selling their own citizens into a program of genetic servitude, a program whose final goal is our complete and total extinction. Alec now understood the terrifying landscape of the modern world. The ancient, parasitic dark force was working to keep humanity in a prison of fear. And now, a new predator, the clinical and desperate Greys, in alliance with a human elite, were working to eliminate the prisoners altogether. Xena's final thought on the matter left him with no room for comfort. The elders were aware of this plot. They had been conducting their own preliminary tests on Earth, studying the nature of these engineered viruses. The game being played for control of planet Earth was more complex and more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. The threat was no longer an abstract concept from the deep past. It was here, it was now, and its goal was nothing less than the end of the human world. A new and terrifying map of the world had been drawn in Alec's mind. It was a world secretly governed by an ancient, fear-feeding consciousness, and a world whose population was being systematically culled and replaced by a clinical, desperate alien race in league with a shadow government. This knowledge was a suffocating weight. And yet, all around him was the evidence of a reality completely free from this struggle. He was inside a machine of impossible grace and power. It moved without sound, without vibration, without any visible means of propulsion. It was a silent testament to a level of science that felt like magic. And so, a new question began to form in his mind, a question of simple physics. How did it all work? Xena answered his unspoken thought, turning his attention from the cosmic drama to the fundamental forces that underpinned it. The power that runs this ship, the energy that allows for travel between stars, is not a fuel that is carried and consumed, her thoughts clarified. It is drawn from the universe itself. Every planet, every star, every vacuum of space is permeated with a limitless field of electromagnetic energy. It is the invisible lifeblood of the cosmos. It is everywhere. It is inexhaustible. And it is free to anyone who knows how to tap into it. There is no need for generators, for combustion, for wires, or for the burning of finite resources. A sense of wonder briefly replaced Alec's fear, a technology that could end all want, all pollution, all conflict over resources. It was the solution to nearly all of humanity's problems. This is not a secret of the universe that we have kept from you, Xena's thoughts suddenly added, a sharp and poignant edge to them. This technology, this understanding of the universal energy field, has been known on your planet for a very long time. It was discovered and demonstrated by one of your own great geniuses, a man who dreamed of a future of light and abundance for all of humanity. And for that dream he was silenced, his legacy buried, and his gift to the world was stolen from you. The name of that genius was Nikola Tesla, and the story of his life is not just the story of a brilliant inventor, it is the tragedy of a future that was stolen from us all. Born in 1856, Tesla was a mind of a different order. While his contemporaries like Thomas Edison were methodical tinkerers, proceeding by trial and error, Tesla was a pure visionary. He claimed that entire inventions would appear in his mind, fully formed and functional, in flashes of brilliant light. He thought in terms of the unseen forces that govern our reality: energy, frequency, and vibration. He understood that these were the keys to the universe. We owe our modern world to him. It was Tesla's system of alternating current, or AC, that won the war of the currents against Edison's direct current, or DC. It is Tesla's system that powers the grid, that lights our homes, that runs the very device on which you might be listening to this. He gave us radio, remote control, the fundamentals of robotics, and countless other innovations. But these incredible achievements were, in his mind, merely trivial stepping stones. They were the prelude to his ultimate dream. Tesla did not just want to power cities. He wanted to power the world. He did not want to send signals from one tower to another. He wanted to turn the Earth itself into a global communications and energy network, with no wires needed. He envisioned a future where anyone, anywhere on the planet, could access information and draw down limitless, clean electrical power using a simple handheld device. This was not a fantasy. He had a plan to build it. With initial funding from the powerful financier J.P. Morgan, Tesla began construction on his masterpiece in 1901, on a plot of land in Shoreham, Long Island. It was a magnificent and bizarre structure, a 187-foot tower, topped with a massive 55-ton copper dome. This was the Wardenclyffe Tower. To his investor, and to the world, Tesla promoted it as a global wireless broadcasting system, a way to send messages, pictures, and even telephone calls across the Atlantic. This in itself was a revolutionary idea, but it was a lie of omission. Wardenclyffe's true purpose was something far grander. Tesla had discovered that the Earth itself has a natural resonant frequency, a specific electrical pulse, like a tuning fork vibrating in space. He believed he could use Wardenclyffe Tower to tap into this frequency, to pump enormous amounts of electrical energy into the Earth's ionosphere. He planned to essentially electrify the upper atmosphere, turning it into a vast, planetary conductor. If he could achieve this, then the energy would be available to everyone, anywhere, with a simple receiver. A rod stuck into the ground with a tuned circuit could draw down all the power they needed, for free. It was to be his gift to humanity, a technology that would end poverty, eliminate the need for polluting fossil fuels, and usher in a new golden age of peace and abundance. It was this utopian vision that led to his downfall. During a meeting, Tesla finally confessed the full scope of his project to his patron, J.P. Morgan. He explained that Wardenclyffe was not just about sending messages, it was about broadcasting limitless, free energy. Morgan, a man whose entire empire was built on the ownership and control of resources, is said to have considered this for a moment, and then asked the simple, world-changing question, where do we put the meter? You cannot meter something that is free. You cannot build a monopoly on an energy source that is as abundant and available as the air we breathe. In that moment, Morgan understood that Tesla was not creating a new business. He was creating a technology that would render the entire existing economic system of energy, oil, coal, and gas obsolete. He was a threat to the entire power structure. Morgan immediately pulled all of his funding. He used his immense influence in the press and the financial world to blacklist Tesla, ensuring no one else would invest in his project. A targeted smear campaign painted Tesla as a mad scientist, a dreamer whose ideas were impractical and dangerous. The dream died. Tesla, unable to secure further funding, was forced to abandon Wardenclyffe. The magnificent tower, the physical monument to a future of abundance, was torn down in 1917 and sold for scrap to help pay off his debts. Tesla spent the rest of his life in a state of genteel poverty, living in New York hotels, feeding pigeons, and working furiously in the laboratory of his own mind. He claimed to have perfected his theories, to have designed technologies far beyond even free energy, including directed energy weapons, what he called a death ray, and even a system for anti-gravity propulsion. He died, alone and in debt, in his hotel room in January of 1943. Within hours of his death being announced, representatives from a little-known government office, the Office of Alien Property, arrived. Despite Tesla being a naturalized American citizen, they seized all of his property, his research, his notebooks, his diagrams, trunks full of documents containing the secrets of a lifetime of unparalleled genius. These papers were taken to a military base, where they were studied under the highest levels of secrecy by a team of scientists. Many of these documents have never been released to the public. The work of the world's greatest inventor was declared top secret, and it vanished behind the curtain of national security. What was in those papers? Blueprints for a technology that could have freed humanity, a science of vibration and resonance that the military wanted to weaponize. Or, as Alec was now beginning to understand, was Tesla's work suppressed for a far deeper and more insidious reason? The control system of the dark force and its human collaborators is predicated on scarcity, struggle, and dependence. A world with limitless, free energy is a world where humanity is liberated. It would end the geopolitical power of the oil cartels. It would end the economic slavery that keeps billions of people in a state of constant stress and survival mode. It would allow humanity to flourish, to create, to dream, and a flourishing, abundant, and fearless humanity is the last thing the parasitic forces that feed on our suffering would ever want. The silencing of Nikola Tesla was not just a matter of capitalist greed. It was a strategic act of war in the ongoing battle for human consciousness. The future he offered was a direct threat to the prison that had been built around us. Alec Newald, sitting in a craft powered by the very principles Tesla had championed, now understood the full shape of this prison. It was not just psychological, genetic, and political. It was technological. The keys to our liberation were not hidden in some distant star system. They were given to us, here on Earth, over a century ago, and they were stolen from us by the very same forces that thrive on keeping humanity in the dark. Alec had been shown the sprawling, secret history of his solar system and the dark, parasitic forces that governed his own world. He had been taken to the very edge of despair, shown a humanity trapped in a prison of fear and a program of engineered extinction. Now, after being shown the depths of the prison, Xena was about to show him what life looked like on the outside. The silent, effortless journey through the void of space was coming to an end. The light ship was going home, and for a few precious days, Alec Newald was to be its guest. As the ship decelerated, a new vista opened up before him. Through a viewing portal, He saw their destination. It was not a single planet, but a binary system, a celestial dance of two worlds. One was a large, barren, moon-like globe. The other, its junior partner in orbit, was Haven. It was smaller than Earth, a jewel of a world with vast, blue-black seas and continents of a deep, reddish-brown hue. A thin veil of clouds swirled through its atmosphere. As they descended, Xena's thought form pointed towards a small, dark spot on the coastline that was rapidly growing larger. That, she communicated, a sense of belonging in her thoughts, is my home, the city of Nepsa. His first impression of the city was one of impossible order. From high above, he could see no chaos, no slums, no sprawling, unplanned suburbs. It was a place of immaculate neatness and breathtaking immensity, stretching out along the coast until it vanished over the horizon. The architecture was entirely alien. There were no towering skyscrapers, no sharp, aggressive angles. The city was dominated by low, elegant, circular structures, interspersed with a few larger, crystalline, pyramid-shaped constructions. The buildings themselves seemed to be made from a material that looked like tinted glass or a semi-transparent plastic, glowing with a soft, internal light. The lightship, itself a perfect pyramid, landed silently on a level courtyard next to two of the pyramid-shaped buildings. The moment Alec stepped out of the craft, he was struck by two things. The first was the sky. It was almost completely black, even though it felt like daytime, with only a thin, beautiful streak of blue and orange along the horizon. The second was the light. Despite the dark sky, everything was perfectly illuminated by a bright, shadowless light that seemed to emanate from no direct source. It was a world without a sun, yet filled with a gentle, pervasive daylight. He noticed the profound and unsettling silence. There were no birds singing, no insects buzzing, no distant sounds of animals. The air was still, clean, and utterly silent. He asked Xena about the lack of wildlife. Her answer was simple and stark. "We have no other life forms on the planet," her thoughts explained. "Except for some very simple types which live in the sea. That is the way it has always been." Haven was a paradise, but a sterile, manufactured one. They moved towards the city's transportation system. There were no roads, no trains, no buses. Instead, there were a series of open cubicles made of the same semi-transparent plastic. Xena led him into one, fed some coordinates into a panel, and the cubicle silently, effortlessly, whisked them away, gliding through the city to their destination. It was a system of perfect, automated efficiency. During his stay, Xena explained the structure of their society, and it was as clean and logical as their architecture. The entire planet was a single, unified state. There were no individual countries, no borders, no rivalries. The government consisted of a high council of 9 members, with 3 representatives elected from each of the planet's 3 major districts. A new councillor was elected every 2 years, at which point the longest-serving member would step down and become a general overseer, an elder advisor. This system, Xena explained, ensured both stability and a constant flow of fresh ideas, preventing any individual or group from holding power for too long. But the most radical departure from human society was their economy, or rather, their complete lack of one. As Alec observed, there were no shops, no markets, no advertising. He learned that hard cash, coins, and notes did not exist. Resources were not bought and sold. They were assigned to citizens based on their specific, everyday needs. Everyone contributed to the functioning of society through work on community projects, which could be anything from scientific research to artistic creation. But there was no desire for the accumulation of personal wealth, no concept of hoarding resources. It was a society that had moved beyond greed. A world without money, a society without crime, poverty, or war. To us, trapped in a system of manufactured scarcity and debt, this sounds like an impossible utopia. And yet, for the last century, thinkers on our own world have been dreaming of and designing just such a future. Visionaries like the industrial designer and social engineer Jacque Fresco spent their entire lives arguing that the root cause of nearly all human suffering, from war and crime to pollution and anxiety, was our reliance on a monetary system. Fresco's life's work, which he called the Venus Project, was a detailed blueprint for a new kind of human civilization, one based not on money, but on resources. In what he termed a resource-based economy, all of the planet's resources would be declared the common heritage of all people. The systems of production, manufacturing, and distribution would be entirely automated, managed by a cybernated, artificially intelligent system. This system would eliminate the need for repetitive human labor, and more importantly, it would eliminate the corrupting influence of money, profit, and political power. The goal of society would no longer be the accumulation of wealth for a few, but the betterment and well-being of all humanity, and the preservation and sustainability of the planet itself. The society of Haven that Alec was experiencing was a living embodiment of Fresco's dream. The automated transport, the assignment of resources based on need, the focus on community and scientific advancement over personal gain, it was a society where the problems of Earth had been solved. It was a world where technology was used not to control and exploit, but to liberate. Alec walked through the silent, perfect, crystalline city, a ghost from a chaotic, fear-driven world. He had seen the depths of the human prison, its walls built from genetic manipulation, psychic parasites, and suppressed technology. Now, he was walking through a city of the free. He was seeing what humanity could have been, and what it could still, perhaps, one day become. Haven was a silent, beautiful, and lonely testament to a future that had been stolen from Earth. And as he absorbed the profound peace of this alien world, he knew that his eventual return to his own chaotic home would be the hardest journey of all, for he would be returning with the agonizing knowledge of a paradise that was both a distant memory and a potential future. The return journey was not a simple reversal of the abduction. It was a conscious and deliberate process of de-acclimatization, a descent from a higher state of being back into the dense, chaotic frequency of Earth. Leaving Haven, Alec recalled, was more emotional than he could have possibly imagined. He was leaving a world of profound peace and telepathic clarity for one of noise, misunderstanding, and fear. Before the final leg of the journey, he was required to undergo a process his alien hosts called transmutation. For approximately 24 hours, he was prepared for his re-entry, a procedure that involved changing the very rhythm of his metabolism, making him consume a strange, salty liquid that would help his body withstand the shock of returning to a lower density. The sequence of events was explained to him beforehand, as communication would be impossible once the process began. And then, a blur, a disorienting cascade of sensations, and he was back. Back in his car, on the outskirts of Auckland, with the phantom memory of 10 lost days and the crushing weight of an experience his mind was not yet ready to accept. He was home, but his adventure, he would soon learn, was not over. In fact, it was just beginning to warm up. The cosmic forces had finished with him, but now, the terrestrial powers were about to take their turn. After the terrifying visits from the men in black and the subsequent recovery of his memories, Alec understood the precariousness of his position. He possessed a secret that powerful forces on Earth were desperate to keep hidden. He made a decision to adopt a low profile, to keep to himself as much as he could. He began the slow, painstaking process of writing down everything he could remember, documenting his experience in what would eventually become his book, a personal testament he planned to release only when the time was right. For a while, there was quiet. He tried to rebuild a semblance of a normal life, returning to his old profession of buying and selling used cars. It was a life of mundane transactions, of friendly haggling and small talk with strangers, a world away from pyramid ships and alien homeworlds. But he was being watched. The first sign came from his landlord, who casually mentioned that some men identifying themselves as police officers had been asking questions about a car Alec had once owned. Then, the surveillance became more overt. A nondescript sedan with 2 occupants was parked on his street every day, a silent, ominous presence. Eventually, the occupants of the car approached him. They did not mince words. They identified themselves as operatives of the Central Intelligence Agency. Their initial approach was not one of intimidation, but of disarming manipulation. They appealed to his patriotism, his love for planet Earth. They claimed that the extraterrestrial beings he had been in contact with were dangerous, a potential threat to national security, and that they simply wanted his help to ensure the planet was safe. It was a soft sell, an invitation to join their team. Alec saw through the facade. He knew from Xena's warnings who the real threat was. He politely declined to make any comments. It was a decision he would soon regret. After his refusal, the overt surveillance stopped. The car disappeared. A false sense of security began to set in. But the forces working against him had merely changed their tactics, shifting from overt pressure to a far more insidious and patient form of entrapment. His profession was to be his downfall. In the world of used car auctions, a world built on quick deals and shifting inventory, he was vulnerable. One day, during an auction, a friendly, charismatic man introduced himself as Jeff Wright. He claimed they had a mutual friend and had met once before. He was charming and plausible. And then, he made an offer that was too good to refuse. He told Alec he had access to a steady supply of cheap, second-hand Japanese imported cars, which were highly sought after and difficult to come by at a low price. Unwittingly, Alec walked into the trap. He began buying cars from this man, the transactions all seeming legitimate. The paperwork was in order. The profits were good. For the first time since his return, things felt like they were getting back to normal. And then, the trap was sprung. The police came knocking at his door. They had questions about the vehicles he had been selling. They asked to see the papers. As the investigation unfolded, the horrifying truth became clear. The cars were stolen. He had been set up, his entire business operation framed as a front for a criminal enterprise. There was no way out. The paperwork had been expertly forged. His new friend, Jeff Wright, had vanished without a trace. He was facing prison time, his life and reputation in ruins. To an outsider, this would look like a simple case of a car dealer getting caught cutting corners. But the tactic of using the legal system to neutralize a target is a well-documented and historically verified tool of intelligence agencies, a cornerstone of a program designed to silence dissent and control the narrative. During the 1950s and 60s, the Federal Bureau of Investigation ran a series of covert and often illegal projects known as COINTELPRO, or the Counterintelligence Program. Its stated goal was to surveil, discredit, and disrupt domestic political organizations deemed a threat. Its methods were a masterclass in psychological warfare, planting false media stories, forging correspondence to create internal conflict, wrongful imprisonment on trumped-up charges, and relentless psychological harassment. The goal of COINTELPRO was to neutralize a target, not necessarily by eliminating them, but by destroying their credibility. This is the perfect trap. If Alec Newald, the respected car dealer, came forward with a story about being abducted by aliens, some might listen. But if Alec Newald, the convicted criminal, came forward with the same story from a prison cell, who would believe him? It would be dismissed as the desperate, delusional ravings of a felon trying to craft a bizarre insanity defense. The man would be neutralized. His message would be buried. Just as his legal case was about to collapse, just as he was facing the cold reality of a prison sentence, the CIA operatives returned. This time, there was no pretense of patriotism. They held all the cards. Their message was simple and direct, just as Alec recalled. Cooperate, and they would fix things up for him with the police. Refuse, and he would be left to rot in jail. He was trapped. With no other choice, he surrendered. He sat down with them and told them everything. He told them about the 10 lost days, about the light ship and the blue-grey suits. He told them about Xena, about the Elders, and about humanity's true origin. He told them about the dark force that feeds on fear. He told them about Kyber's destruction and the history of the solar system. He told them about the grey agenda, the hybrid program, and the deal with the shadow government. He told them about the free energy technology of Nikola Tesla. He told them about the utopian world of Haven. He gave them everything. And when he was done, they were true to their word. The legal problems, the criminal charges, they all just went away. The system that had been so ruthlessly efficient in trapping him was just as efficient in setting him free. They had what they wanted: his intelligence, his first-hand account of a reality, They were desperate to understand and control, and then they left him alone. But the act of being silenced, of being coerced into cooperation, had the opposite effect. Alec had seen what humanity could be, a world without fear, without want, without the invisible masters who fed on their suffering. He had seen Haven, and even though he had been threatened, framed, and broken by the wardens of Earth's prison, he made a final, defiant choice. He would not remain silent. He would publish his book. He would tell his story, not for fame or fortune, but because he understood that the only way to fight a conspiracy of silence is to speak the truth, no matter the cost. He was no longer just an abductee. He was a witness for a world that had forgotten its own past and was blind to its own potential future. The story of Alec Newald is, in the end, the story of a message. He was a courier, sent back from a reality beyond our own, carrying a truth so profound it had to be wrapped in the layers of a cosmic drama to be understood. He endured the loss of time, the violation of his mind, the threats of a shadow government, and the systematic destruction of his life, all to deliver this message. And like so many truths delivered to humanity, it was not a simple declaration, but a subtle and paradoxical piece of wisdom. Just before his final departure from Haven, as he was being prepared for his return to our world, Xena left him with a final, cryptic instruction, a thought form that would echo in his mind long after he had forgotten her face. "Forget the abomination you have seen here," she had told him. "When you get home, with all caution and common sense, let the sun see your eyes. In spite of what others may say, do not hide yourself from a friend. Forget the abomination." What a strange command after showing him a utopian world of perfect order and peace. Was Haven the abomination? Perhaps. In a way, it was. A world of sterile, silent perfection, devoid of the chaotic, vibrant and messy tapestry of life that defined Earth. Perhaps the message was a warning against seeking a sterile utopia, a reminder that the wild, untamed, and even painful experience of life on Earth held a preciousness of its own. Or perhaps the abomination was the knowledge of the conspiracies, a command not to dwell in the darkness of the grey agenda or the parasitic nature of the dark force, but to focus instead on the light. Let the sun see your eyes. This is the heart of the message. It is a command to live authentically, to step out of the shadows of fear and secrecy. The forces that control our world thrive in the dark. They operate through deception and manipulation. To look the world squarely in the eye, to live an open and honest life, is in itself an act of profound rebellion. It is to refuse to be a victim, to refuse to be silenced. Do not hide yourself from a friend. In a world deliberately fractured by the strategy of divide and conquer, this is the final key. The antidote to fear is connection. The antidote to isolation is community. The system is designed to make us afraid of each other, to distrust our neighbors, to retreat into our own isolated bubbles of reality, to reach out, to share our truth with those we trust, to build bridges of understanding. This is how the prison walls are dismantled, brick by brick. This leads to the central concept of Alec's entire experience, the title of his book, and the true purpose of the relationship between the elders and humanity, co-evolution. This was never a story about powerful gods coming down to save a helpless mankind. That is the old paradigm of control, the very model the dark force uses. The truth is far more humbling and far more beautiful. It is the story of a partnership. The elders, for all their ancient wisdom and advanced technology, need humanity. They are an ancient race, perhaps grown stagnant and sterile in their perfection. They need the genetic vitality, the chaotic creativity, and the deep connection to the life force of a vibrant planet that humanity possesses. They need us to help them evolve. And humanity, for all our passion and resilience, desperately needs the elders. We need their cosmic perspective, their suppressed knowledge, and their wisdom to help us remember who we are, to break free from the viral programming of fear, and to finally reclaim our full, divine potential. We are two species, bound by a shared ancestry and a shared destiny, and we will either rise together or we will fall separately. And so, we arrive at the end of our long journey, and we find that this entire cosmic saga of elders and dark forces, of greys and shadow governments, of destroyed planets and utopian worlds can be seen as a grand metaphor for the battle taking place, right now, within every single human mind. The elders are our higher self, the divine spark, the God DNA that lies dormant within us, whispering of our infinite potential. The dark force is the ego, the inner parasite, the voice of fear, self-doubt and judgment that keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering and limitation. The Greys and their deal with the shadow government represent the temptation of the material world, the seductive promise of sacrificing our soul for technological power and the illusion of security. The suppressed technology of Nikola Tesla represents the infinite, abundant solutions that are always available to us, the creative power of our own consciousness, which is systematically denied by a system that profits from our belief in scarcity. The world of Haven is the blueprint for what we can create, a vision of a peaceful and logical world that is possible the moment we collectively choose to build it. And Alec Newald. Alec is all of us. An ordinary person, living an ordinary life, who has been awakened, willingly or not, to the fact that reality is far larger and more complex than we have been told. And now, like him, we are all faced with a choice. The story you have heard tonight is not just a tale of one man's fantastic journey, it is a mirror. The true question is not whether you believe his story. The true question is what you will do with the message. Will you continue to feed the parasitic forces that thrive on your fear? Will you allow your precious energy to be harvested by the endless, engineered cycle of media outrage and political division? Will you remain a willing prisoner in a jail whose bars are made of your own limiting beliefs? Or will you make a different choice? Will you heed Xena's final message? Will you find the courage to let the sun see your eyes, to live your own truth, even if the world calls you a fool? Will you turn off the voices of fear and, instead, choose to build connections with those around you? Will you begin the quiet, daily, revolutionary act of starving the beast by consciously choosing understanding over anger, compassion over judgment, and love over fear? The story of Alec Newald is over, but yours is being written right now in this very moment, in the silent, sacred theatre of your own consciousness. The universe is not what we have been told. Our history is not what we have been taught, and our potential is far greater than we have ever dared to imagine. So, what story will you choose to tell? Sleep well amidst these enduring mysteries. I am Mr. H. If these reflections stir your imagination, consider subscribing to Mystery History for Sleep, and enabling notifications together will uncover more paths to tomorrow's wonders. Good night.